Welcome to the Pragmatic Hero's Journey, a monthly podcast about becoming a pragmatic author. Hosted by Tammy Corin and Tim Mitra. On this episode, we talk to Herbert Wolverson about his journey to becoming a pragmatic author. This episode was recorded on June 16, 2021. The Pragmatic Hero's Journey podcast is owned and operated by the Pragmatic Programmers, LLC, home of the Pragmatic Bookshelf. The Pragmatic Programmers, founded by Andy Hunt and Dave Thomas, has one simple goal: to improve the lives of professional developers.
So Herbert, how are you?
I'm pretty good. It's been I still can't get used to Missouri summers, so yeah, I'm just glad to be somewhere with a fan.
Well, I don't know if Tammy's, you just said you listened to the show before, and as you know, we like to get the guests to tell us who they are and what they do. So can you do that for us?
Yep, I'm Herbert Wolverson. I'm the author of Hands on Rust. I'm also the sole proprietor of Pragmatic Productions, a one-person consulting shop where really, if you ask me to do something and you pay me enough, I'll do it as long as it's legal.
Right.
Also release indie games on that label, mostly just things I write for fun. I write too much, play guitar, foster children, and have two geriatric dogs who are both blind.
There's so many topics from which to choose. I don't even know where to start. All right, no, I know where to start. I want to start with the game development. How the heck did you get into game development?
It probably started, I'm going to date myself here, but in the very early 1980s, my dad was teaching computer skills in evening classes, and he brought home a little BBC Micro, back in the days when 32K was a lot of RAM and games loaded on cassettes. And little seven-year-old me thought that video games were absolutely the best thing ever. And so I begged him to show me how to make things. He pulled up BASIC and taught me basically Hello World. And I thought that was fantastic. Kept going. Started trying to write my own games. I mean, really terrible 7-year-old games. But at the time, they felt like they were absolutely amazing and really just got me into the subject, really enthusiastic. And my parents would, instead of giving a long-suffering sigh, tell me how good it was, encourage me. So as I got better, we got nicer computers. It seemed like every time I wanted to learn a programming language, gaming was what got me excited about it. So it would be, okay, well, I've got Pascal now. How do I make a game in Pascal? Now it's C, so I'll make a game in C. So the driving idea behind Hands on Rust was to share the same way I learned Rust, just to say, hey, it's a new game. It's a new programming language. This is cool. Let's make a game. And to me, that's always been how it sticks. So I'm just kind of hoping that works for everybody else too.
So I was curious. I was watching your talk on the YouTube earlier, and you mentioned that you could write a Rust game in 100 lines of code. Is that correct?
If you cheat and use a library to handle the difficult bit of starting OpenGL and translating between whether you're on a Mac, Windows, Linux, X11, or whatever, then the complete Flappy Bird is about 120 lines of code, including, I think, the menu. So
you basically have the graphics load up automatically and then code the bits in between it, right?
That's right. And, for that one, I did go for a very source code oriented. So it's not like Unity where you could drag your Flappy entity onto the screen, add a little bit of code to handle going up and down and turn on collision detection. So there is a little more than just sort of drag and drop, but it really is it really is pretty straightforward. And what I was trying to get across to people was you don't have to be a great programmer to make a fun game.
Right. Okay.
If you know the basics, then you know enough to make it, to have fun making something. And that's really what it's all about. Is I'm just hoping people will send me screenshots of cool things they've made, and then I can feel proud of them.
I'm curious, what game hooked you into game development?
Repton. It's I think over here the games are called Boulder Dash or something like that. You're a little guy moving around, digging through dirt, picking up jewels, and there are rocks that fall, and it's kind of very primitive old 8-bit physics. The Repton series was that, but with a cute lizard. And they kept making more and more of the games until they made one with a map editor. And suddenly, that was like I was jumping up and down, bouncing off walls because I could draw the map I wanted, try and make new puzzles. And then they brought one out with a scripting language as well. And from that point, I realized, hold on, anyone can do this. It wasn't until a few years later I realized how much fun it was to write your own scripting language first. But that really got me into it. And I was also, we used to go to arcades. I'd see expensive, put a 20p in. Double Dragon type games, and my parents would never let me put money in because we had a computer at home. So I'd come home and I would fire up a sprite editor and I'd try and make my own Double Dragon. Obviously it wasn't as good, but it was probably better for me.
So how do you go from playing games and enjoying games to game development? And then, even beyond that, writing a book about game development?
I think in some ways I had it easier because back in the 80s, you often obtained games by buying a magazine and typing in source code. So there's less of a gap there between understanding how to write some code and run the game. But even now, I would recommend download any moddable game, start making some mods. Believe it or not, writing a mod is programming. You may not be making the engine, but you're telling the computer what to do in order. Once you get into that, have a look at, either Hands on Rust if you're interested in lower end stuff. There are some excellent C tutorials, Swift, Python, really any language you like. And the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to give it a go and don't be afraid to fail. You learn more from trying to make something and almost getting there than you do from it working perfectly first time. I mean, every time. And nobody gets it right the first time anyway. As for writing a book, I grew up in a really academic environment. Both parents are teachers. And they kind of idolized authors, editors, and similars as being the greatest people in the world. So it's been a bucket list item since I was probably double digits to publish a book. So I was seriously just overwhelmed and happy at the chance to do so.
Cool. Well, I'm curious, though. You mentioned one thing back there about writing your own scripting language. That kind of perked my ears because, I've done games, I've written apps, but I've never actually entertained the idea of creating my own language. Can you give us a bit of background on that, or?
I've tried it, and I'm really bad at it.
Oh, okay.
There are tools out there that can help you. The problem I always run into is that sooner or later I've made C again because I just keep running into, hey, what's the best way to do this? And then my brain goes back to languages I already know. And before you know it, it's not really a scripting language. I've just glued three languages together.
So then why Rust? You had mentioned Unity before as a potential option for creating games, and that's Unity is a thing that I use from time to time for 2D and 3D. But what made you settle on Rust as your language of choice, not only for your personal game development, but also something to write a book on?
I've been using, first of all, Unity is a C# language, and I've been using C# at work for so long, I finally kind of hit the point that I didn't want to do that for fun. So in my fun stuff, I'd been doing C and C++ for a really, really long time. And I started into a project called One Night in the Dungeon, which was an Unreal Engine 4 roguelike with really pretty 3D graphics and an awful lot of C++ on the back end. And by the time I came out of that, I was just really fed up with life in C++ land because I'd spent the best part of 6 months trying to fix what were basically memory allocation issues with sharing things and just bizarre things happening because Unreal likes to spread your execution out across CPUs, and you can't always control exactly what's happening in what order. And if you're not really careful, then you wind up with a program that crashes. Like I shipped out a beta and discovered that it worked perfectly as long as you had fewer than 8 cores. And I, at the time, couldn't afford a system with more than 8 cores, so I had no way to test it. I was just getting kind of frustrated. So I got that game out the door, and I sat back and asked around a bit, and several people told me I should look at Rust. Because Rust's two big selling points are memory safety, which, well, I've been having troubles with that one, and they always use the phrase fearless concurrency, which I would say mean the compiler will make your life miserable if you try and code requires a data race. So you're protected from an awful lot of the bugs because the code simply won't compile if you haven't thought through your synchronization. So I downloaded Rust. I downloaded a couple of tutorials, got started and realized, I really like this language. The Reddit forum, Roguelike Dev, was doing a Reddit makes a roguelike series over about a month, posting tutorials in Python. So I thought, okay, I'll follow along, but I'll follow along in Rust. And my Rust learning story was similar to a lot of people who come from C, that at first I curse the syntax, and I spend about a week wondering why the borrow checker doesn't like me. And what the borrow checker does is it stops you from accessing the same bit of information in two places at the same time, where both of them could change it and blow you up. That's something you want to prevent, but it was, almost humbling the amount of times it was telling me that I was doing it wrong. Then, by the third week, I'm realizing that I'm actually not only really enjoying Rust, but it's improved my C programming at work, because now I'm starting to write my C code in a way that Rust wouldn't complain about, and I'm running into fewer bugs. So that really got me going, and I decided that I would try and help some Rust people out, and I created the Rust Roguelike tutorial. I spent first released a little 9-part guide on how to start at the beginning, and heavily focused on this is the Python tutorial, but in Rust. Suddenly my phone started just jogging across the table with notifications. Opened it up, and apparently I went somewhat viral on Twitter, and my entire notification queue. I discovered Twitter actually mutes and replaces the count with a smiley face once you get to 100 in your Android notifications bar. Mm-hmm. So I had a look and discovered people really liked this, so I started expanding out the tutorial. The tutorial ended up on Hacker News, and suddenly I was getting quite a lot more exposure than I knew what to do with. Rust. And I was also getting all these messages from people who wanted to help, which was just amazing. The Rust community is the most friendly community I've ever been in, and I've been in a lot of open source communities over the years. And people would look at the tutorial, say, this is great, but you could fix this. And then rather than just give me a bug report, they'd actually send me code to do it better, do it right. And so it kind of all blew up from there until finally a fellow from the Amethyst Foundation, Erland Sogan Harland, I hope I pronounced that right, introduced me to Pragmatic. So that's that journey.
So can you give us a bit of background on Rust? Like, is it a C-based language? I think you said that, right?
Rust is a systems language, so it's like C. It compiles down to native code. It looks a lot like ML, which is a language that's popular in academia, with quite a bit of Java, quite a bit of C, quite a bit of C++ sort of thrown in. It's very terse. It's very focused on getting things done, but the emphasis is on giving you power and not letting you shoot yourself in the foot too badly. So most of the benefit of Rust is that you'll get compiler errors and friendly warnings and messages that tell you how to fix things, rather than you run the program, you realize, oh gosh, I've leaked 32 gigs of RAM in the last hour because I forgot to delete a pointer. Well, Rust specifically won't let you do that without writing an unsafe tag to tell you that this bit of code can't be trusted.
And so it runs on the three sort of major platforms of Windows, Mac, and Linux as well?
Yeah, and pretty much everything else. It's just being accepted into Linux kernel development, so it is the second language in Linux now. So I've used it on everything from a Raspberry Pi to an Android device, all the way up to huge servers. And it's there are platforms it doesn't run on, but they're getting fewer and far between now.
And so, what kind of applications do people write Rust in, or write with Rust?
So Mozilla, the browser company, were sponsoring Rust for a long time, and over the last few years, more and more of the Firefox browser is actually written in Rust. They started with all of the safety critical parts and gradually started moving through, because Rust makes it really hard to make a security vulnerability.
Wait a second. Firefox was written in Rust?
Parts of it.
Whoa, my mind is blown now. I'm sorry. I don't know why. Okay, I'm not totally coming clean. I never really focused on Rust at all until Herbert came to the Pragmatic Programmers to write a book with us. So to me, Rust was just like another one of those, it's Java, JavaScript, Kotlin, just the stuff that was sort of on the outskirts of my radar. But I have to tell you, full disclosure, I'm also Herbert's developmental editor on this book too. So I've got a lot of knowledge in terms of what this book is all about. And when I started with him, I had, limited knowledge on what Rust was all about, what it could do, and so on and so forth. But working with Herbert on this book has totally opened up my eyes to things outside of my comfort zone, like, Swift or Unity or Unreal Engine. But now you've just thrown in this whole other element that I didn't even think about, like development outside of games. And now I'm like, hey, Herbert, you should totally write a book on Rust outside of games.
Maybe I should. At work, I'm currently using Rust to estimate radio signal propagation between any 2 points on the planet. It's actually getting some popularity in the scientific world because you can throw together basically math problems relatively simply because it tends towards looking more functional than the classic object-oriented setup and a lot of math types like that. And I'm not really a math type. I defer to people who are really good at math to help me figure it out, and then I write the code.
Okay, two things. I'm awful at math, and you should totally talk to me after the podcast, and let's set up another book.
All right. Now you're in trouble.
I know, right? What am I asking for here?
I'm in Herbert's in trouble. Herbert's in trouble.
Yeah. Run!
I do want to circle back. Sorry, I do want to circle back on roguelike. I'm not quite sure what I saw that in your bio, and I saw bits and pieces of it. Can you sort of?
Sorry, that's a term I throw around like everybody knows it just because.
Hang on, Tim should know what it means, but we're just going to let it go.
I don't.
And honestly, it refers to games that are based on a game called Rogue. It's popular back when I was starting computers. Typically, dungeon crawler, grid-based, moving around, collecting treasure, beating up monsters. The original Diablo started out as a roguelike, and they added smooth movement and got rid of the turn-based side of things. And honestly, I thought it was a better game for it, but it's a dungeon crawler. So I really should say dungeon crawler.
I follow you now. I mean, you got to remember too, Tammy, when I graduated university, the Mac just came out. So people didn't really have personal computers other than the Apple or the Commodore, right? So
that's when dirt was first discovered. I remember now. Thank you.
They used to grind up our abacuses and make dirt,
Yes.
If it makes you feel better, the first time I saw a computer program was my dad filling out a punch card for a university mail-in-your program, and we'll mail you the results program.
I am so glad you mentioned punch cards, because the truth is both Tim and I are very old, but I just like to pick on him because he's slightly older than I am. Not by much, but just enough to where I can pick on him for it.
Yeah, the smart kids in school used to do punch card programming. I wasn't among them either. Back in the 70s. Used to go to the local university with their shoe boxes full of cards, right?
And if you want to make them cry, you take one metal and put it at the end.
Yeah, well, the smart ones used to write numbers on them, so they would, in case they dropped them or whatever. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I mean, we could talk about, Herbert, your experience with writing with the Pragmatic Programmers, or rather the Pragmatic Bookshelf.
Good segue.
So, Herbert, tell me about your experience with writing with the Pragmatic Bookshelf. Are you enjoying it? Have you enjoyed it? I heard a rumor that you might be writing another book. It's also a confirmed rumor because I'm your editor on that one, too.
This is the first time I've ever written a real book. Previously, I've just written tutorials online and my master's thesis, which is a really effective doorstop. So it was kind of strange. I was first contacted by, I was basically a fan of one of the tutorials who had been talking to PragProg, and they had a book idea, but they didn't have an author. And so they introduced me to Dave at PragProg, and Dave Rankin was fantastic to chat with. It quickly became clear that he had a book in mind, and it wasn't quite the book that we were talking about. So I threw a proposal together that really was a little too close to the tutorial I'd already written. and it was narrowly rejected, but it was rejected in such a friendly way that I felt inspired to sit down and write a proposal that I thought was closer to what Prag wanted. And so I was literally on the phone to my mom in England, just celebrating wildly the second that I saw the message that, hey, your idea was proposed. And then I really didn't know what to expect next. I was afraid that, what I was really afraid of was that the process would consist of, okay, off you go, send us your manuscript in 6 months, and we'll tell you what's wrong with it. So I was really happy to see that the process was explained. Tammy was assigned. We had a meeting, introductions. I seem to remember the contract tells me not to talk too much about the process, but let's just say they have a cool way of writing books. It works. It feels a lot like programming. You write out a bunch of a big chunk of the book. You send it up to the editor. It comes back. Basically, bug reports go back and forth. And so it felt a lot like what I'm already comfortable with. And then once we got to the review stage and people started looking at it, I don't think I've been that nervous since I was trying to pass my law finals years and years ago. But feedback started coming in, and it was mostly positive. So I finally, breathed a sigh of relief, started incorporating all the changes. The big thing I really liked about working with Pragmatic is that it is like writing a program. I write what I think is good. People tell me, okay, that's good, that's not good. Things get changed, and then it goes out to wider and wider audiences who throw more feedback at me, and eventually it starts to feel like it's our book as much as it's my book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that the founders of Prag are programmers, and I know a lot of the authors. So yeah, I think it is. I think you're right about the process. It's probably very, very similar to what they would do, in writing an app, right, or writing a site or something like that, right?
Yeah, and everybody's been really friendly. I don't know if that's because I haven't done anything truly terrible, which is possible, but everybody's been friendly, encouraging, and nobody's yelled at me for asking a question. So, I follow various authors on Twitter. I've seen the occasional grumbling about editors, and it's really not like that at all.
That's true. Yeah, Tammy's my favorite. Tammy's always sort of been my favorite go-to editor person. So this hands-on Rust book, is this is just coming out this summer kind of thing? Is this what's the time frame that we're talking about in terms of writing this book for you?
Tammy could probably give a more accurate answer than me, but it's in beta right now. It just finished. The last beta release message was off to layout and then the printer.
Nice. Okay.
It should be in full color paperback, I believe, the first week of July. If you can give me 1 second, my air conditioner kicked on and it is super loud. I hadn't realized just how loud the AC is in here.
Oh, any consolation, I barely heard it. Yeah, so I don't think it's going to come in through the recording.
I was mostly loud enough that I was having trouble hearing my headphones.
Oh, okay.
I am slightly hearing impaired, so...
Oh, I am totally hearing impaired. In fact, my husband and I, if we don't have the closed captioning on the television, it's like in fact, we laugh with each other because something will come up under closed captioning and we look at each other and we're like, did you hear that? I'm like, no, I didn't, but it says it happened.
But you know what, I'll tell you, on TV, I also watch with the captions on because I find that the audio on TV shows, sometimes people mumble on those shows, and I go back and go, what did that guy say? And it's not me. It's the way that the audio is being produced these days, right?
No, and they turn up the background music.
The background music and the guns and the robots and the slicing, dicing.
Awful.
Yeah.
Although it has given me the idea that I should carry my iPhone in my pocket with my own theme music, and whenever I say anything really important or I don't know, exciting, I should just hit play. Yeah. And I could talk really low, and then everyone could just listen to the music and be like, I don't know what she said, but look at that music. I listened to that music. It sounds great. Something happened that was important.
Mm-hmm.
And closed captioning really helps if you're watching old fantasy movies, because my mother speaks Welsh, and she taught me just enough that when, the spooky people are saying something that sounds completely alien, half the time they pick Welsh. And they're actually saying something like, did you get groceries on Monday?
Wait, so Welsh. Now, Tim knows I'm geographically challenged. Explain to me, like, your heritage, your background. Welsh, like that, to me, I'm like, okay, that person speaks Spanish, or they speak French, or Italian, or German. I rarely encounter anyone who says, oh, yeah, my mom speaks Welsh.
I grew up in southern England, a town called Farnham, it's really just outside of London. My mother is from just west of Cardiff, where they filmed the new Doctor Who. My dad is from Birmingham and sounds like Ozzy Osbourne. But my mom's entire family before that are from the Isle of Anglesey, which is a tiny little Anglesey the size of tiny little island the size of a decent-sized city off the north coast of Wales, which is the bit that sticks out on the west of Britain. They got it's kind of a slight note. Hopefully no Anglesey people are listening, because I'm going to say it used to be kind of a backward place, and they finally built a bridge to it so it didn't require a sea voyage, and suddenly Anglesey became quite a modern place, and oddly enough now has some of the fastest internet in Europe, because most of the fiber going into Britain as a whole goes through it. But my memories of going there, age 3 or so, were crossing the scary bridge with the whirlpool and a tiny island, discovering that I'm related to everybody and they all speak this strange language, Welsh, that is a beautiful language, but almost nobody speaks it anymore.
See, now I've been schooled. Now I know. I didn't know that before. Then again, I do kind of live under a rock, so,
Well, somebody today was telling me how much I've learned to sound like an American, so...
Yeah, you don't sound... I believe it or not, I was born in St. Albans as well, but I've been here since I was 6. So, I don't have a UK accent anymore, right? But yeah, you don't sound... I would never have thought you were from England or Great Britain at all.
He sounds like he's from Canada because he's such a nice guy.
Sorry. Alrighty, so as you may know, if you listen to the show, we have some hot seat questions. We like to put our authors in the hot seat and ask them some things that sort of got them to where they are today. So if you're ready and you're seated comfortably, we can begin. Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
Fire away.
All right. So the first question is, what or who was most influential in your career besides Tammy?
I listened to the one with the other Chris Pine last week, and I've been pondering this question. And I want to say Brian May from Queen, because he made really cool music, amazing guitar player, and he's still got a PhD in astrophysics.
True.
And he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And I showed up to not long after Freddie Mercury died. I showed up to Brian May's first solo concert in London, and being a little over dedicated, I showed up 3 hours early in the rain, and out comes Brian, hugs everyone in the line, and looks like he's going to cry, saying, "I can't believe you came to my show."
Wow.
And it's, of course we came. You're Brian May. But really, that's a role model. If I could be that cool, I would love to.
All right, cool. So what do you like most about your favorite programming language?
Of course, my favorite language right now is Rust. I say that because I've been through a lot of languages over the years. I can't say for sure Rust is going to be my last ever favorite. But mostly I like that it's very explicit. So it doesn't do something without telling me it's doing it. And if it does do something without telling me, that's usually a bug. And also it's really good at telling me, no, Bert, that was a really stupid idea. Don't do that. And I need that. Sometimes I will come up with a big, grandiose idea, and I prefer it if the programming language explains to me early that my grandiose idea would be a much better idea if I thought about maybe how some of the little bits work first.
Right. Okay. So what's your favorite text editor or IDE, and why?
It honestly depends exactly what I'm writing. For game programming, I use Visual Studio Code, which is not the big Visual Studio. And I like it because it reads just about every file format there is. With Rust plugins, it becomes kind of an IDE, but not too much. Now, when I'm working on big, heavy business things, I actually use C-Lions from the I just blanked on the name. The JetBrains people. Sea Lion is their C++ editor, but with Rust plugins, it has probably the best debugger I've seen that can handle some of the slightly strange server code I encounter at work. So when I'm at work at Sea Lion, when I'm doing something for fun, Visual Studio, if I'm on a random Linux device, I usually type VI because that's usually there. And I've been using that on and off since college.
Right. Okay. So you've been a programmer, now you're an author, and you've been an instructor, teacher kind of guy. If you could choose another profession, what would it be?
That's a good question. 20 years ago, I said astronaut, but I don't think they let nearsighted, slightly deaf, overweight programmers into space anymore. So that's probably off the list. The weird thing is I actually really like my job right now. I really like doing consulting work because I get a wide variety of things to do. I seriously have found out that I love writing. It's like I had a whole bunch of pent-up words inside me that have been trying to get out, and suddenly I have an excuse to start writing them down. And so I finish my day, realize it's time to start writing, and I get excited, more energetic. And so right now, I really just, if a few million people would like to buy Hands on Rust, I'll become a full-time writer. That would be good.
Well, here's hoping, right? Okay, cool. So do you prefer to work alone or on a team?
Oh, gosh, that's a dangerous question. So don't tell my team, but alone. But the truth is, it depends on what I'm doing. If I'm on a team, I'm happy so long as it's well-defined who's meant to do what and we're not tripping over each other. And I'm happier alone if I've got a well-defined problem that I can solve, interact with whoever the client is, and they come out of it happy because their problem's solved. I come out of it happy because I did okay work and hopefully they put food on my table.
Cool. All right. So we have a few more this or that type questions. So book or ebook?
For me, I would have said book for years and years and years. And I still would for any kind of book that I want to have open and use as a reference when I'm programming. I'm also addicted to bad sci-fi and fantasy novels. Usually the worse, the better. And for that, I will say ebook, because a Kindle in bed is just a fantastic way to plow through novels I'm never going to read again.
Form or function? And
that's actually something I've talked about in a few other seminars. So when you're writing a game, I think it's important there's going to be a form aspect to it, but I think it's important to work on function with a really ugly form for long enough to find out that this game is a good idea. I've been in a whole bunch of open source and group game development setups where people got excited, we've written out some design, and the artists have got super excited, worked all night, made the most beautiful artwork that it turns out we can't use because the game idea was just not a good one.
Right.
And we have to change stuff. On the other hand, if you're making something and yes, it's, that this is what I'm going to make, I think the function has to follow the form a lot in games. So if you decided that rockets have to fly from left to right and they have to follow a certain trajectory, well, that's the form and it's defining the function. So I don't think you can separate them completely.
True. Okay. This is kind of an astronaut question too, but and I think astronaut was on my prior career list as well. But so pen or pencil?
Now, funnily enough, I am horribly dyslexic, and I usually just use a tablet.
Okay. Do you use a stylus, or do you type onto it?
Stylus if I need to draw something, and text otherwise, because my handwriting is right up there with doctors.
Okay. All right. Cool. So last question. I'm going to mix it up a bit for you, especially. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Doctor Who?
Oh, now I'm going to have to say Doctor Who because otherwise my wife will murder me in my sleep. And I'm actually sitting in an office here next to a TARDIS bookshelf, signed pictures from various doctors and a large radio-controlled Dalek. So, and we met discussing Doctor Who online before we got married.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Truthfully, though, I do actually like Star Wars and Star Trek. I don't think you're a terrible person for liking more than one.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite T-shirts is Matt Smith and Amy Pond in the pose of Luke and Leia from from the original Star Wars poster. And instead of Darth Vader, it's a Daleks.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And yet somehow you've never sent me that T-shirt. Like, hey, here's a gift. Just let me know I love you.
Let you have it? Oh, I see. Okay.
No, I don't have one.
You know what?
Thanks,
it was one of these things where I saw it on Facebook. I have a couple of T-shirts like that. I saw it on Facebook, and it was like, $30 for this. I'm like, yeah, take my money. And then I never heard or seen from them again. And I probably should Google the design. It's on. I've posted it online myself, but I probably should Google it and see if somebody's actually making it, because it isn't.
And then you should buy it and send it to me. I'm just saying,
men's large, again, right? Yeah, I know. Okay.
Men's large. Yeah, okay, that's exactly what I wear. See, he knows. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully the scary BBC licensing people didn't get them. They are remarkably terrifying. One of my college mates actually works in their auditing department now and tells me that the licensing people down the hall scare him, and he's an accountant.
Wow.
Well, Tim, you wear a men's large. You should just send me yours. I mean, problem solved. I'll wear it as a nightshirt. Don't care. If you loved me, you'd send it.
It's pretty old and used and whatever. All right.
So am I, Tim. So am I.
So are we wrapping up, or?
We are. We are wrapping up, and I have to apologize, Herbert. I have been looking forward to this podcast for, ever since you and I started talking about it months ago, about having you come on to the show. And here I am, all like recording in the middle of my house with all sorts of echoes and terrible networking and a broken computer. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I forgot about the bird. And I feel so awful and so unprofessional in this recording. But I'm also very glad that you took the time out to come and deal with me, the bird, the networking. So I appreciate that, Herbert, for the listeners. Oh my gosh, I hope they've listened to this point with my silly, issues. And but you're so fantastic. Your book is fantastic. I love it.
And thank you for having me. There's a golden retriever been trying to join this for the last 20 minutes. So I hope you can't hear the scratching sounds.
Yeah, you can talk to the bird. It'll be fine.
So can you tell our listeners where you are, what you're working on, and how people can get in touch with you?
Okay, the easiest way to get in touch with me is on Twitter. I am at Herberticus. You can also find me on Reddit, but I honestly, since the last UI change, I just realized I've got 50 messages waiting for me, so I'll be trying to reply to those pretty soon. Currently, I am working with Tammy on another book, Rust Brain Teasers. With any luck, I'll be able to work on another book after that. I haven't quite figured out exactly what to write. I think I
have.
I think I need to take a vacation first.
Yes.
I'm really hoping to get back to England to see my mom. But other than that, we are, my wife and I, Mel, are hoping to adopt very soon. We're on an adoption list, and I think we just came up to number 2 on the list.
Ooh, congratulations, by the way.
All right,
Tim, I am throwing the wrap up over to you because I am quite certain if I try and do it, my internet's going to be like, nah, try again, and it'll be awful. So I'm going to toss the wrap up to you. But again, thank you so much for joining the show. And Tim, you can close it out.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Hero's Journey. You can find us on the web at pragprog.com. We're also on Twitter and Facebook as @pragprog. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider writing a review on iTunes and sharing a link on social media. Go ahead. Let the world know we're out there. You can also send your feedback and guest requests to pragtalk@pragprog.com. Well, lovely talking to you, Herbert.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Pragmatic Hero's Journey. We hope you enjoyed the show. For more information about the Pragmatic Hero's Journey, please visit pragprog.com or send an email to pragtalk@pragprog.com.